Don't do it too quickly. Just take it step by step. Make sure the acquisition is a fit before you sign the deal. You've got to look at, in particular, the culture of the two companies.
Hello, I'm Shirley Kavanagh, and you're very welcome to the Leadership Discoveries podcast, where leaders and experts from across sectors share insights, turning points, and hard-won wisdom that can drive real leadership impact. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by Rob Wood, founder of STEM Healthcare and the Rob Wood Enterprising Futures Academy at Newcastle University. Now, Rob founded STEM Healthcare, a company focused on helping life science and pharmaceutical organisations optimise their commercial performance. This is through evaluation and benchmarking of how well medical and marketing field teams execute brand strategy in the real world. Now, having expanded STEM globally, Rob sold his business in a deal valued at up to £84 million. And since then, Rob has continued to shape the sector as an investor, chair and non-executive director, with a particular focus on technology-enabled pharma services and AI-driven healthcare businesses. And through the Enterprising Futures Academy, he's also helping widen access to entrepreneurship for the next generation, a cause I know that's very dear to his heart. Rob, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to speak to you.
Good to speak to you too. And thank you for joining me. I was really looking forward to this conversation. And when I was looking at your bio and thinking about you, it seems like there are these three very distinct parts to your career: entrepreneur, working in the corporate world, and now bringing all those things together, including the Enterprising Futures Academy. Was there a grand plan, Rob?
There was never a plan that was so long-term that would see me from when I was at university to where I am now. In fact, when I was at university, I wanted to do something completely different to the job I ended up doing. I wanted to be a PE teacher and ended up being a sales rep in a pharmaceutical company. But once I started as a sales rep, I always tried to have a 5-year plan. So not a grand plan, just like a stepping stone plan to do what I do and see what the next job might look like in that 5-year period. Definitely not a grand plan, though.
Okay. So you were a pharmaceutical rep and you had an idea. How did that idea come about? Were you confident in the idea? Like, how did that work?
I progressed from being a sales rep into various different jobs in the head office. It was a company called Zeneca, which became AstraZeneca. And I just got to the stage in life when I was about 40 that I didn't want the second half of my working life to be the same as the first half, working for big corporate companies. And just wanted to try entrepreneurship. It's something that I really wanted to do early on in life, but couldn't do it because of various circumstances. So I took a year to think of an idea. I had 3 ideas. I can't remember what the other 2 were actually, but I remember I had 3. And STEM was the idea that I thought might work. So I left AstraZeneca in 2007 and set up STEM just to give it a go and see if it worked. My thinking was if it didn't work, I'd give it a year and then go back into corporate life if it failed.
Were you confident that it would work? Because I'm always wondering about entrepreneurs, because that's kind of risky, what you did.
Yeah, no, I definitely wasn't confident because what STEM was, I don't know if it had been tried in pharmaceuticals and failed, but at that time in 2007, nobody was doing it. And that might be because it was a bad idea or it just wasn't needed. And in fact, the first person I ever went to see was the head of Pfizer in the UK. And he said to me, I don't mean to be arrogant, but I know everything about my business and I don't need anyone externally to come in and do any sort of benchmarking or quantification. So I see no point in this. And actually, I got that similar response for the next 6 months. I even tried to give the service away free of charge to one of the pharmaceutical companies. So the marketing director, who I got on quite well with, and he said to his team, there's this thing called a STEM audit. It's free of charge. Do you want to do it? And they said, no, we don't like the sound of that. So I couldn't even give it away free. So I definitely didn't. I didn't have the confidence it would work. There was more doubt in my mind than confidence.
And what was the turning point then? Like, what was the one moment that you said, okay, or the market said, okay, rather?
Yeah, it was probably a bit of luck because there was a lady at Roche, one of the other pharmaceutical companies, and she said to me, I hear you do this thing called an audit. I have a team leader who I don't think is a very good leader. I would like evidence to help me remove this team leader. Can you come and do an audit and generate the evidence for me? Which is not the reason to do the STEM audit. That said, I needed the work, so we went and did a project. It was so the first one we ever did. It's in my mind as clearly as it was yesterday because it was a good project, but it turned out this team leader that she had doubts about was brilliant, and that team leader went on to head Europe in one of the other pharmaceutical companies, and now, well, she set her own business up. She became an entrepreneur and sold it for quite a bit of money. So she ended up being really brilliant. The lady who brought me in ended up leaving after a couple of years, and I don't think became very successful.
It's an extraordinary story just in terms of evidence and the importance of evidence, I suppose, you know.
Yeah, well, that's it, because that first project gave me, if you like, some sales material because I could anonymize the slides, but then I could show people, not just tell people, I could show them, here's what you get from a STEM audit. And once they could visualize it, my storytelling became more powerful and never looked back. Within a month, we got a program for one of the companies across Europe. I said, yes, we can do it. And I had to figure out how we do the other countries in Europe, the big five. So Spain, Italy, France, Germany. We had to find a vehicle, which we did. And that was very successful. And then it grew really fast after that. But the first 6 months was a big challenge.
Yeah, and am I right in saying that nearly every main pharma company actually was using STEM audit at one point?
When I sold it at that time, 49 out of the top 50 pharma companies.
49 to the top 50, extraordinary again. And that point, I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, that scaling up point is usually the most critical, and it's often what people get wrong. Is there anything again from, you know, the STEM experience for you that, you know, that is essential, if you like, for that scale up piece?
Yeah, the essential bit is to get great people around you. It wasn't a success because I'm a great business leader or entrepreneur. It was a success because I managed, again, a bit lucky, I managed to get great people around me. So just before I started, I said to a guy I used to work with in a different pharma company in the past called David, if he would come and help set it up with me. At the time, he was David McNaughton. He was the head of oncology for Pfizer in the UK. So it was a really good job he was young, so big career prospects ahead of him. And I said, I don't have much money. I've got enough money to pay you, which was equivalent of about 20% of the salary he was earning. But if we get business, then I can hopefully pay you as much as you're getting now. But I told him what the idea was. And after a couple of discussions with his wife, who was a little bit more nervous than him, he decided to join me, which was a massive confidence boost because I did trust his view. And his strengths and my strengths are different. So we complemented each other really, really well. Well, without him, it wouldn't have been a success, I'm sure. And then we got person 3 and person 4. A lady called Jess came in, a guy called Ted came in, and they were brilliant. They still work with me in my companies now. So that was I don't think there's any secret to it. It's just it's sometimes not easy, and I was lucky because I knew Dave, I knew he was great. I didn't know Jess and Ted, so we brought them in, and they turned out to be brilliant as well. It's all about great people.
And how, in some companies, founder-led companies, it becomes all about the founder as such, and there's a big personality that's, you know, sitting over the organization. I don't get the sense that that was the case with you, and I'm wondering, again, was that something innate for you? Was it just your natural style, let's say, or was it something you were making an effort to do to not make it about Rob Wood? That STEM was not all about Rob Wood.
Yeah, well, I am who I am, so I didn't. I would never try and I wouldn't look at a textbook and say, here are the characteristics of a successful CEO and try and be that person. I'm who I am. And if that works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But I do look at when we build teams and bring other people around it, like David, like I said, his strength's different to mine. So I would look for when a team's being built that it's cohesive and there's a synergistic effect between of bringing people together.
Hmm. And again, just when you think of a business like yourself, and I know people talk about the entrepreneurial mindset as such, is there such a thing as the entrepreneurial mindset?
I think there are elements of an entrepreneurial mindset that are there's a common thread, but then there are other things that are different. Like if you think of the top 10 biggest companies in the world who had entrepreneur founders, those entrepreneur founders are very different people to each other. Richard Branson's different to Elon Musk. That they are different, but I'm sure there's a common thread that has similar characteristics. So I think risk taking is definitely a part of being a successful entrepreneur. You have to have a mindset at the start that it's okay if it fails, but let's give it a go. You can't be super conservative and be an entrepreneur. And then when you start to grow, again you have to have a risk taking mindset, calculated risk, but you have to you can't be super conservative.
Yeah, and just about that whole piece, you mentioned failure there. So when STEM scaled up and was very successful, how did failure sit with you within that environment? Did you have the same tolerance, or did you have a different tolerance, or?
So a couple of countries in Europe, we ended up hiring the wrong people. We went through a process that we thought was strong enough, but in the end, the wrong people came into those countries. In a fast-growing organization, especially when you're client-facing and the clients rely on good interaction and quality, you can't live very long with people who are not basically in the wrong job. We had to remove those people within 6 months, so we had to act quite quickly.
Hmm.
But generally speaking, it was quite a successful story.
Yeah, very successful. So you made a decision at some point that you were going to sell STEM and move on. And I'm just wondering again, because you'd built something, what was the decision piece around that? I mean, did you feel, this might sound strange, but any emotional connection as such to the brand that you'd built, the organization that you built, or were you able to just say, no, time to move on to something different?
The plan to sell STEM was in my head before I founded STEM, because the longest I'd ever stayed in a job in the corporate world was 5 years. Generally speaking, I used to move roles every 2 years. The last role I was in was the 5 years. And I thought if I did my own thing, probably intuitively, I could maybe double that. And then I'd probably get bored. So before I set STEM up, I had a 10-year plan to sell it after 10 years. In the end, I sold after nine years, so more or less stuck to the plan. And the second question, did I have an emotional connection? The day after I sold STEM and the money came into the bank account, I was quite sad about it. So yes, the second day I was perfectly fine. I was very happy. But there was only one day that I felt really bad after that. And in fact, now I have a company that's replacing STEM around the world using AI.
Yeah, very good. Just one thing you said there about you moved every couple of years when you were in the corporate world, because often I talk to people who, in my own practice, who are saying, "Oh, I've been here 5 years or whatever." And do people need to change organizations?
I think it probably depends a little bit on the sector, but in pharmaceuticals, because there's so many different jobs and it's a very dynamic, growing industry, it was then, it still is now, there is the opportunity if you have the mindset to move, to accelerate your career, but you have to be flexible, and you have to be open-minded about doing different jobs, and you have to be open-minded about switching companies. So if you stay in the same company, it's possible to get from maybe being, well, I was a sales rep, which is quite low in the hierarchy, to a really senior job, but it probably takes a bit longer. But if you're willing to switch companies, you can accelerate that career. So I worked for 5 different pharmaceutical companies. So I accelerated my seniority by switching companies a few times. In the end, I went back to AstraZeneca, which is where I started. But in between, I worked for different pharma companies.
Sort of we move on a little bit to when you'd sold STEM then. And again, I know the challenge for a lot of companies is integration of acquisitions. And it can work both ways, being the acquired company and, let's say, being the company that's doing the acquisitions. And if you take it from the STEM perspective, joining, a large corporate FTSE 250, any lessons that you take from that that you might give to other people? Because it's not always easy, that sort of thing.
I think probably the main lesson is make sure it's the right company before you sell. So we had many offers. I had an offer from a private equity firm that was 8 million more than the figure that I sold it for, but decided that I wanted to sell to UDG because the home was more important than the money. Well, once it got over a certain amount of valuation, the money was less important. It was other things were much more important. So I think that's the main lesson. Make sure you sell to, if you're going to sell the company, sell to the right people. And then after that, the integration, I think there's two parts to it that makes it work or not. One is the mentality of the new owner, in particular the CEO, and the second is performance. So if your performance is good, everything's fine. If your performance is bad, then I've seen other companies where it's not fine.
Mhm. And just something that you said there, that once it got over a certain valuation as such, other things came into play. Was there one other thing, let's say, that was really important to you?
Yeah, the most important thing was having a career progression set of opportunities for the young people in STEM. So as STEM grew, we had a lot of people who joined from university after they'd finished their first degree or masters. But we used to target quite a bit of people who had health economic masters. So lots of young, very talented people. And as I was saying before about a big pharma company, there's lots of different opportunities to go. With UDG, STEM was one of 32 companies. And what I liked about it is that's another 31 companies, plus the UDG corporate world that my young staff could explore and go into. And that was the biggest driver.
Very good. And just if you take it from the other perspective, and because pharma is very acquisition active, let's say, and disposal active, if you were giving advice to some leader that's in the process of integrating a new acquisition into their business, what would be the advice that you'd give them?
Don't do it too quickly. Just take it step by step. I think it goes back to the point I made before. Make sure the acquisition is a fit before you sign the deal. You got to look at, in particular, the culture of the two companies. I remember after I joined UDG, the first the first year was very successful. The deal structure was I got two-thirds of money up front and one-third over 3 years. And after the first year, STEM was very successful at UDG. And the CEO on board said to me, forget the target for the next 2 years. If you stay for the 2 years, but do a couple of different jobs. And they wanted me to look after an advisory group that ended up being 4 companies. So I had STEM. I then inherited an acquisition that had just been made, and I did another 2 acquisitions before I left in those 2 years. But that acquisition that I inherited had a very different culture to the UDG culture, and in particular, the CEO had a very, very different personality to the personality in what the core values in UDG. So I ended up having a discussion with that CEO within the first few months, and agreed that he would leave the company. Maybe that deal shouldn't have happened. They maybe should have sold to somebody else because the cultural fit just wasn't there right from the start.
Hmm. Interesting. Just in terms of now, what you spend your time doing. So, instead of sitting and putting your feet up, it seems that you're as active as ever in the world of work, and you're involved in technology enabled and AI and machine learning businesses. Can you just tell us a little, give us an overview of some of those businesses that you're involved in?
Yeah, I have 13 companies altogether. There are 8 that are more AI driven. One of them is called AdvanceAI, and it's an AI replacement of STEM. So when I left STEM in 2019 or left UDG, I said to STEM that the idea of the human observer, so we had human observers that would go out with sales reps and medical teams and do what you described before, benchmark their quality. I said the idea of the humans doing that in the future, and it could be a risk and they could be replaced by AI. They didn't do anything. So in 2022, we created Advanced AI, and it's phenomenally successful. Already working with more than 30 pharma companies, 8 out of the top 10 biggest pharma companies, soon to be 9. We're about to sign the contract with the ninth. That's brilliant. I do it mainly for fun, and I really, really enjoy it. Another example of one of the other companies is a company that makes two-way, fully conversational avatars. So this is a group of doctors in Manchester who formed this company with vision to educate doctors better than they felt they'd been educated using AI. So just a quick anecdote, the Vanderbilt Medical School in the US just published a study in one of the US medical journals where they took two groups of medical students, one where they trained using the conventional university methods, one they trained using these conversational avatars, where there was an avatar patient and the doctors had to diagnose, like question the patient and then diagnose. And what they found is the medical students who'd been trained using the avatars were statistically significantly more accurate in their diagnosis. So again, that's a super interesting company. Another one looks at dynamic segmentation targeting. And the reason I love that one is the founder, a guy called Patrick, who, when he was 11, he was making computer games and selling 50,000 a time. So he was a rich kid. He was a child genius. And when he was in his 20s, he was the CTO at MIT, which is the World Center of Excellence for Technology, when he was only young. And then he decided to set his own business up. And working with people like that keeps me feeling young, keeps me educated. He's genuinely one of the world's KOLs on AI. So yeah, I could take you through all of them, but they're all different. The connection is they're all pharma services and they're all run by nice people. My two requirements when I get involved in a company is run by nice people and a good product.
Really interesting. And do you have concerns, Rob? I mean, a lot of what you're talking about there is, AI for good, let's call it, for want of a better phrase, where it's probably at the end of the day making real impact for people. But at this stage, because we're hearing a lot of stuff, a lot of noise, mythos, everything that's going on and big concerns, do you have concerns about AI and the use of AI?
Generally, I think the use of AI is a good thing overall because it should be used as an enabler to allow humans to do whatever their role is more effectively. I do have a concern though, and this is agentic AI that maybe it's been around for about 9 months, 12 months, in the real world being talked about. So most of the AI, either machine learning or large language models, they can build them in a controlled environment. They can't make up their own decisions. It's where it's safe. You get some hallucinations with LLMs still that are a bit strange because you don't know why it is. Hallucination is something's wrong, but often you don't know it's a hallucination, and when you do, you don't know why it happened. And the big companies are still trying to figure that out. But with agentic AI, that's when the AI can make up their own decisions. They can just make things up as they go along. That's very, very dangerous. I can see if that was the dominant type of AI in the world, who knows what'll happen.
Yeah.
Which is different to having AI agents that sometimes I hear people talk about agents and agentic AI, which are different things. You can have an agent that's machine learning or trained by LLMs, but agentic AI I think, is quite scary.
Yeah. And a lot of people talk about the human plus tech, human element and tech, and the two being aligned as such. Do you see that play out in the real world that you're in?
Yeah, and in fact, the regulations are more or less say there has to be a human in the loop. So there's an AI EU Act that has been sort of draft for the last 2 years. It's in force now, and that mandates that you have to have a human in the loop.
Mm-hmm. Which is really important just in terms of what you're talking about there in the area of agentic AI. Can we just move on to the Enterprising Futures Academy in Newcastle University, which I think is brilliant? It feels a little bit like a legacy project. Is that what it's about? Because, I have read about you, Rob. I know you. I understand where you came from. You tell a great story, what your parents did, that you weren't exactly born with the silver spoon in your mouth. So is there a sense of a real understanding of some of these kids, and maybe what they need to be? So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so after I sold STEM, I wanted to do something to help young people, and which is where the academy idea came up from. I wanted to create a foundation that could help young people be educated about business. I wanted to actually target 18-year-olds who don't go to university. That was the original idea that I had a few years ago. At that time, about half of the kids who are 18 don't go to university. And my theory was there must be a lot of those who they don't go to university because of things that are not in their control. But they're clever, they're bright, they could be brilliant people in the future and very, very successful. And I thought if I could help those, it would be inspiring for me and it would be useful for them. Um, and I was going to do it in London because I live in London. And the alumni team at Newcastle University got in touch with me, and I got to know them a little bit over a couple of years. And they said to me, why not do it in Newcastle? Because Newcastle's one of the most deprived areas in the country, and you're from Newcastle. And it's just amazing that I hadn't thought about that before then. So it was the obvious place to do it. So that's where it's based. We worked on it for a couple of years. We launched it about 18 months ago, and so far it's doing really well. And the idea behind it, we've extended the age range, so now it's not just 18-year-olds; it's from 14 to 22, and we want to target a lot of people. And one of the reasons I did it with Newcastle University is a couple of reasons. They have a big outreach program, so although they're in the Northeast, they have an outreach program across the country, but also they're in the top 3 universities for startup businesses that come out of the university. So they already had a business mindset, and they already wanted to help young people to become entrepreneurs.
It sounds fantastic, but there's a lot of talk as well about, multi-generational workforces and the challenges that some older managers have with younger employees and vice versa. I'm just wondering, interacting with that cohort of people, do you see something different?
That's really scary.
Yeah.
So I don't actually do the delivery personally. There's a team at Newcastle University. But the reason I say it's scary, I attended a workshop a couple of months ago of there were 70 14-year-olds in the room, and I joined at the end of the day after they were finishing some workshops, and they'd been asked to write some questions down for me at the end of the day. So I had the questions, I was reading them out and then giving the answers at the toughest audience I've ever had to interact with. Like, for example, one of the questions was, what do you do with all your money? And I said, oh, that's no problem. My wife spends it all. So, and I could hear, like you just laughed, I could hear all the lecturers behind me, they all started to giggle. But the audience in front of me, these 70 kids, blank faces, absolute blank faces, not one giggle amongst them. And I think they call it the millennial stare.
Yeah, right. I haven't heard of that.
Yeah. They're really difficult. They're a brilliant age group, aren't they? Because they're the future. But actually, for an old fogey like me, I don't have the skills to interact with them properly. But the team at Newcastle do. They have brilliant people who are of the age group and the mindset that they can interact with them.
Brilliant. Millennial stare, I must remember that actually. I think I have seen it a few times, in fact, as well. But so, Rob, just bringing this discussion to a close, for leaders who are listening to this conversation now, what would you say to them they need to be? What do they need to know in this world that we're operating in at the moment?
I would say probably be open-minded. The world is changing because of technology, and I think getting the balance right between embracing the technology, but in a way that you don't do it too quickly, because technology is changing, and if you embrace the wrong technology, it might be redundant or obsolete in a year's time. So I think it is. I think it's much more difficult today than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But I think you'd have to be a little bit open-minded and just try and use your intuition to get the timing right for when you do it and what type of technology you embrace.
Yeah, very good. Rob, I'm reluctant to bring the discussion to a close, but I am. And I just want to say that in true transparency, I've been on your team and I've worked as part of your team, and it was probably one of the most memorable times in my career, and I learned so much from you. So thank you for that, by the way. And thank you so much, as I said, for joining me. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Totally enjoyed that.
I hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and I know for me, every conversation leaves me with something new to think about. So that you don't miss any of these episodes, you can subscribe to the Leadership Discoveries podcast. Do connect with me on LinkedIn or visit shirleykavanagh.com for more resources to help you reflect and support you in your own leadership journey. Until next time.